Good evening, everyone, and welcome back to the Washington Outsider Report on the Coalition Radio. With you today is, as always, Irina Tsukuman. That's me. I'm the editor-in-chief of the Washington Outsider, and Mr. Ahmad Obali from Gunas TV. Today we'll be discussing a very hot-button issue: the recent escalation in tensions between Iran and Azerbaijan. Various Iranian officials had accused Baku of harboring Zionists on the border with Iran. All of that comes amidst other interesting developments, namely attempted assassinations against Israeli businessmen in Colombia and Cyprus. Mr. Bali, thank you and welcome to the show. You're in Baku currently, correct?
Yes, thank you. I'm glad to be here. Thanks for inviting me. I am in Baku, that's correct.
So you have the view right from the area about the current situation. Um, Before we get into the meat of things, just tell us a little bit about yourself, about your TV station, to introduce to our audiences.
Well, thank you. I am originally from South Azerbaijan, which is a currently northwest part of Iran. Uh, Very close. I was born and brought up very close to the border of the Republic of Azerbaijan and Iran. That is Aras River. That's where the all the tensions are right now high in the area. Both sides of the Aras River is populated by Azerbaijanis. The northern part is Republic of Azerbaijan. Southern part is the province of East Azerbaijan, and there's a province of West Azerbaijan. There's province of Ardabil, Ghazni, Zanjan, Hamadan. At least six provinces are populated mostly by Azerbaijanis. The number of Azerbaijanis in Iran are 30 million. About a third of the population of Iran is Azerbaijanis. I am from there. I escaped prison in 1982, and after 4 years in Europe, traveled around. Finally, I found home in the United States in late 1985, and I've been in Chicago since early 1986, living there, and I started this broadcast that's called Gunas TV, or a shorter version of South Azerbaijan. And we concentrate on human rights, democracy, basically freedom. We try to at least we bring awareness to our population, which is sort of under pressure, additional pressure from the government, because our culture is banned, the language is banned in school. We cannot go to school in Iran in our own language. We have to only study in Persian and so forth. So these are human rights violations that we concentrate on our television. We've been on air since since 2000, late 2004, early 2005 on satellite, and we are a 24 hours broadcasting station, and we basically broadcast in Azerbaijani language, but we also broadcast in Arabic for Arab viewers in southern part of Iran, in Persian as well, to Persian speakers at least once a week.
I was actually in the very area you just described on the Azerbaijani side, near Aras River in February, while I was touring the liberated territories in Azerbaijan only a few months after the Second Karabakh War. I saw the famous bridge that symbolizes the relations between the two sides of the river. And at the time, things seemed relatively calm. But during the war, Iran was already making certain comments that seemed to be indicate some sort of support for the Armenian side. There were rumors and videos of Azerbaijan moving vehicles into the border areas at the time. After the war, things seem to have calmed down, and yet recently, before these recent comments, um, it seems the escalation seems to have returned with the rumors of Iran moving illicit materials into liberated territories jointly with Yerevan. What
Mm.
exactly is going on with that? Who is actually responsible
Well,
for the movement of these goods and why?
okay. Well, first of all, the escalation in relations between Iran and Azerbaijan is has a deep history that goes back at least to um, to the time when Azerbaijan regained its independence from Soviet Union again in 1992. In 1992, Iran was playing a mediator role between Armenia and Azerbaijan. And in early May 1992, when Iran was in process of chairing a mediation council in Tehran, Armenians took the famous city of Shusha away from Azerbaijan. So then Azerbaijan found out later that Iran was kind of playing mediator role, but actually buying time for Armenians behind the scenes for them to take more territories. And then, of course, that so-called mediation, but also at the same time helping Armenia continued. And the reason Iran, as a Shia and Muslim country, helps Armenia versus Shia and Muslim Azerbaijan is because of few reasons. One is Iran does not want a strong Azerbaijan. Iran doesn't want a Republic Azerbaijan to begin with because there are more Azerbaijanis in Iran that we inspire from. Um, we get more hope from the existence of Republic of Azerbaijan, and then Iran is aware of this. So Iran helped Armenia to occupy more territories from Azerbaijan by at least openly bringing Russian arms through Iran, sending it to Armenia. But later on, we also found out that Iran was giving Armenian tanks and artillery, more ammunitions. Iran was on the surface trying to help Azerbaijan train its military that didn't have at the time of the breakup of Soviet Union. But Azerbaijan found out later that the trainers were actually collecting all the information and about Azerbaijani army and passing it to Armenian side. So the relations went down, but Iran is a big country, a strong country, and Azerbaijan is a small sandwich between Russia from north, Iran from south. Both countries didn't have good relationship with Azerbaijan. Russia didn't want Azerbaijan to go fully independent. Russia wanted Azerbaijan to be like Armenia, sort of a vassal state to Russia. So Russia was pressuring Azerbaijan. Iran was pressuring Azerbaijan. Armenia from the east took over 20% of Azerbaijani territory. So Azerbaijan was kind of forced to at least uh, keep his eyes closed and play like, okay, nothing happened from Iranian side. But until recently, in 2020, when Azerbaijan took the area back, then Iran lost all the influence that it had. So Iran has not been happier. Actually, it's been angrier since Azerbaijan took over its occupied territories and cleared about 130 kilometers of landline that was under Armenian occupation and right across from Iranian border. So Armenia lost the war. Iran got upset because Iran is losing strategically. Iran is losing financially. Iran is losing in terms of regional influence. So Iran is not happy. So what Iran did is after the war, Iran kept sending materials, goods to not only to Yerevan or Armenia, but also through Armenia to part of the occupied land that is still under Russian control, Russian peacekeepers' control, populated by Armenians within Azerbaijan. So that's the part that that kind of uh, not only took Azerbaijanis by surprise, although Azerbaijanis knew that Iran is was sending all those materials to arms and materials to Armenia and the occupied parts of Azerbaijan. Azerbaijan thought that after the Second Karabakh War, Iran would change its policy, but recently they found out that that's not the case. So Iran charged part of the road from Iran through Armenia to Yerevan goes through recently liberated Azerbaijani land. So this big road highway was built during the Soviet Union, where Armenia and Azerbaijan both were part of the Soviet Union, and so it didn't really matter where the road goes through. So, but after the independence, part of the road becomes part of the Azerbaijani territory. So all the trucks and goods that Iran is sending to Armenia partially goes through Azerbaijani land. So Azerbaijan started charging taxes to Iranian trucks, especially Azerbaijan got upset when they found out that some of those trucks were actually taking military equipment, materials, gasoline, and so forth to a city called Khan Kandi in Azerbaijan that is part of Azerbaijan, but Armenians call it Spanakert, which is the center of the so-called that disputed area that Azerbaijan and the whole world considers as part of Azerbaijan. So, and then two of those truck drivers were arrested, and Iran was surprised that Azerbaijan actually arrested Iranian truck drivers. So this started the whole thing, but there are more behind the scene why Iran is upset about recent Azerbaijan's behavior.
What else do you think is causing these issues? Because to most of the world, this came out of the blue. They did not expect the sudden uh, renewal in tensions and hostilities. So what are some of the other factors that are contributing to this issue? And did Iran really expect to get away with moving goods through Azerbaijani territories with no penalty? I mean, that's a violation of the country's sovereignty. No one
International
usually
law,
just
yeah,
yeah, exactly.
yeah,
I mean,
that's a
not that
violation of
Iran
international
particularly
law,
cares about
violation
that,
of
but still.
yeah, yeah. Well, Azerbaijan, as a sovereign state, has the right to have any relationship with any country it chooses. Azerbaijan has the right to control its territory that is recognized by, ironically, Iran recognizes Azerbaijan's territorial integrity. But then when Azerbaijan tries to take care of its territory, Iran becomes upset. You know, this is the issue, the main issue, one of the main issues. But Iran is having other issues, as you asked and I mentioned before. One of the issues that Iran has with Azerbaijan is the relationship between Israel and Azerbaijan. Iran is not happy about it and openly talks about the fact that, as they call it, Zionists, as they have come so close to Iranian borders, which is surprising to me because Israel and Azerbaijan had good relationship from beginning, and why now? Why are they bringing this up now? I think one of the reasons is because Iran recognizes the fact that the newly liberated area, Irina, as you saw, right on the other side of the border, right on the north side of the Aras River, is very big area. It's 130 kilometers wide that Azerbaijan has access, which didn't have access before, and Iran thinks that Israelis and Americans, Western countries that Iran doesn't like will have access to that area for information gatherings and so forth. But the problem is there is not a single person in those liberated areas. It's all mined with landmines, and
Mm-hmm.
you saw, Rina, when you went there. There was only few, maybe 20, 30 meters wide area that you can travel to, and other than that, you couldn't go to any other parts of the region. So Iran is using this as an excuse that Israelis are taking over Azerbaijani land. Azerbaijan doesn't need any other country's armed forces to control its territory. Azerbaijan has a very strong army, as it was proven in 44 days. Azerbaijan basically annihilated Armenian army, and they capitulated on November 10th. So, but Iran, first of all, Iran is not happy about Azerbaijani-Israeli relations. Iran is not happy about the fact that the new corridor that after the agreement will open the communication routes that will open between Nakhchivan and the mainland Azerbaijan that goes through Armenia, will open the road, open the communication to Turkey and beyond Europe to Israel and to Central Asia to China. And if Iran loses leverage because until then, all the land communication between Azerbaijan and Nakhchivan and Turkey was going through Iran. So Azerbaijan and Turkey are becoming stronger in the region, and they're gaining more influence, and Iran is losing influence, and Iran is in effect has been kicked out of South Caucasus and doesn't really know what to do. A third problem that Iran has is the fact that as Turkey and Azerbaijan gets stronger, so Armenia and Iran is getting weaker. Turkey and Azerbaijan influences the region far more, and this also inspires South Azerbaijanis, us in Iran, to perhaps ask for more rights and maybe self-determination, maybe federalism, maybe in the future, maybe a independent country, as our numbers are far bigger than the Republic of Azerbaijan. So Iran is aware of all these facts and doesn't really know what to do. They're angry. All they do is reactionary, bringing armed forces to the border, having military exercises, tanks and artillery, helicopters, and all of that. They thought that Azerbaijan is going to back down, and that didn't happen. Actually, Azerbaijan got angry and responded, protested with anger, and Iran thought that the South Azerbaijanis will be quieter at the moment at this time, and that's not happening. Our population mostly from Iran supports Republic of Azerbaijan. That is making Iran more angry. So as they get angrier, they do unpredictable things. They react very unprofessionally, calling names and trying to belittle Azerbaijan, and that backfires on them as well. So Iran absolutely behaving very irresponsibly on this issue. Azerbaijan behaves responsibly. Azerbaijan has all the rights to control its roads. Azerbaijan has the right to choose its friends and relationship with its friends. Strategic alliance with Israel is important to Azerbaijan. Buying arms from Israel buying energy from Azerbaijan. These are relationships that should be left to countries themselves. Iran should not interfere in Azerbaijan's internal or external relations, and Iran keeps doing it, does not accept the fact that Azerbaijan has become a very strong independent country.
Now, you mentioned that Iran is losing economic and political leverage in the region. Interestingly enough, just as it seems to be losing its footing in South Caucasus, Iran has joined with Russia, China, and a number of Arab states, as well as Central Asian states, in a dialogue group, which hasn't received much coverage in Western media, but is worth noting precisely because Russia and China are leading that particular effort, and they are leading an effort to unite Central Asian states, and Iran is now part of that geopolitical new bloc. How does Azerbaijan view this situation that with Iran's growing closeness to those two countries? Because Russia and Azerbaijan have had a very complicated relations over the years, and these sort of dialogue groups and blocs and are clearly an effort to offset Western influence in the region and clearly to strengthen key strategic countries towards those two states. How is that going to affect these current events, in your opinion?
Well, the Central Asian states were part of Soviet Union before. They are still so-called under Russian influence area. Uh, Armenia, Azerbaijan, and Georgia on this part of the Caspian Sea are trying to, other than Armenia, at least Georgia and Azerbaijan are trying to be independent of Azerbaijan of Russia. They are part of the non-aligned movement. Armenia has a strategic alliance with Russia and Iran. So Iran is trying to go to Central Asia, but the problem with that is the Central Asian countries they do not trust Iran, and I think Russia doesn't trust Iran either. If you look at what happened in Syria, where Iran spent billions of dollars, tens of billions of dollars, they sent army units, they sent the IRGC force, Quds force, they sent um, recruitment from Afghanistan, from Pakistan, all the Shiites from Pakistan and Afghanistan, from Iraq. They recruited a lot of people from Syria, pro Assad people from Syria, and trained them. So they spend a lot of money and time and effort. Russia doesn't trust Iran. Central Asian countries don't. And Iran has demonstrated a complete lack of respect to international law, to anything that they have promised is not coming to reality. So Iran is having a very, very tough time right now, gathering any friends around Iran, uh, other than Iraq, that is sort of kind of forced to go with Iran because of Shia connection. Every other uh, neighbor, including all the Arabs in the south, Pakistan and Afghanistan in the west, Central Asian countries of Turkmenistan, Uzbekistan in the north, and definitely Azerbaijan in the north and Turkey in the west, and even part of Iraq that is Kurdistan, they don't trust Iran at all. So Iran is going to have even tougher time to have any influence in the region within its neighbors at all. I think Iran is going to be challenging to get any sort of friendship, in fact, from Russian side either. So Iran is in deep trouble to begin with.
To go back to the original point about Israel-Azerbaijan relationship, Israel and Azerbaijan have had a long history of defense and as well as other cultural and other relations. And Iran's gripe about that is not new. Some years ago, there's been attempted terrorist attacks, attempted assassinations against Israeli targets in Baku, which were successfully thwarted thanks to that cooperation. And we are seeing that history is kind of starting to play out again. Could you comment a little bit about Iran's attempt to essentially interfere in Azerbaijan that way by targeting Israel as this because it was so upset about that relationship?
Well, first of all, Azerbaijan and Israel have great relationship ever since Azerbaijan has been uh, an independent country again since 1992. I think Israel always had warm relationship with Azerbaijan since then. But historically, Azerbaijanis and Jews are they never had any problem whatsoever. Azerbaijan is a very tolerant country. Azerbaijanis are a very tolerant nation uh, towards other religious minorities or ethnic minorities, for that matter. And in fact, Azerbaijan today is, I think, is the large is one country that has largest Jewish minority in Muslim world for fact that has no problem at all. Jews are very welcomed in Azerbaijan. They're part of the society. They fight and die for Azerbaijan. In fact, one of the famous tank commanders that died against Armenia in the first war was a Jewish commander that was very brave and fought and died for his country. Iran doesn't like this, and Iran thinks that the Azerbaijanis and everybody else should have problem with Jews in general, but Israeli in particular. And Azerbaijan doesn't see any reason to be hostile towards Jews or Israelis. So, in order to foment a problem between Israel and Azerbaijan or Jews and Muslims in Azerbaijan, Iran attempted, on a few occasions, Iran attempted to kill Jews or Israeli diplomats in Azerbaijan or kill Jews outside the country with the help of some Azerbaijanis that have been, as we call it here, as brainwashed by Iranian government, either with money or uh, they bring some Azerbaijani young people to come and then they take them through intensive courses of brainwashing. But that Iran has never been successful on these attempts. And as they try and fail, they become more aggravated and angry. And the recent attempt by Iranian agents using an Azerbaijani with Russian passport to assassinate Jews or Jewish businessmen in Cyprus or Colombia is another attempt that luckily failed. And what they were trying to do is maybe frame this as Azerbaijani that is killing a Jew, but actually we found out that that Azerbaijani guy was actually a Azerbaijani, originally from Azerbaijan, but living in Russia, trained and supported by Iran.
Interesting point, and it's also interesting to note that while Iran has been very vocal about Israel's relationship with Azerbaijan and very and has made these strange accusations through a number of channels, they have been silent about the fact that Turkey and Israel have also had a long history of diplomatic relations, and Iran, just as it has its own economic and other relations with Azerbaijan, has trade, has active relations with Turkey, but has not attacked Turkey on the basis of that relationship. Can you comment about that? Why that is?
Well, Iran is in effect, Iran is very smart on certain occasions, certain situations, uh, especially picking who to fight against openly, who to fight against rhetorically, who what to do in action against certain countries. Turkey, for instance, is a very strong country, is a big country. Turkey is a member of NATO. Turkey is not a country that Iran can mess with. So in that matter, Turkey and Iran sort of understand each other. They don't want to um, create problems in the region for each other. but at the same time, they both know that they don't like each other. So this is one fact. Azerbaijan and Iran, on the other hand, is similar to Turkey and Iran, but because Azerbaijan is a smaller part of the Azerbaijani country, land was occupied by Armenians. Azerbaijan was in big need of help from Islamic nations in to support Azerbaijani's territorial integrity in international frame, in United Nations votings and so forth. Azerbaijan actually needed Iran's vote as well, at least didn't want to create problem with Iran. So Iran used that to push Azerbaijan around and wasn't successful completely, but Iran was able to use this leverage to gain uh, other advantages within Azerbaijan, like having Iranian agents, you know, work in Azerbaijan under diplomatic, with diplomatic passports and under cultural activities. And Azerbaijan actually knew about this, and they were very careful on controlling Iran's activities within Azerbaijan until 2020 war. Once the war is over, Azerbaijan was not afraid of Iran anymore. But Azerbaijan doesn't need Iran's voting or lack of let me put it this way. Azerbaijan doesn't need Iran's uh, friendship anymore. Azerbaijan doesn't want Iran as an enemy either. It is Iran that is choosing this uh, hostile approach towards Azerbaijan because of Israel and its relationship with Jews and Israelis worldwide. So to make it short, Turkey is a big country Iran cannot mess with. Iran thought Azerbaijan is small enough to mess with, and they did for a while. They are not going to be able to do it anymore.
Interesting that you know that the Iranians sent undercover fake diplomats to engage in these activities in Azerbaijan because that seems to be a growing modus operandi for Iran around the world. We've seen that happen in Algeria. As a result, Morocco and Iran severed their relations in 2018. We've seen them do that in Europe. There was an attempted terrorist attack against opposition in Paris, and as a result, one diplomat, quote unquote diplomat, was sentenced to 20 years. But what happened to the rest of the cells in Berlin, in Vienna, etc., is unclear. He may have just been sacrificed to shut down this entire discussion. But Iran has a long history of using diplomatic covers to plan terrorist attacks and various subversive activities around the world in pursuit of its geopolitical agenda. It should not surprise us that it would try to do the same in Azerbaijan, but I don't see them trying to stop these efforts just because Azerbaijan is taking a stronger position. My understanding is that its smuggling activities into into Azerbaijan to Armenia have been finally curtailed, but its radical statements recently in public, that's interesting. It's a little bit interesting because I'm trying to understand what is this message being sent here. Okay, they don't like the cooperation, fine, but they make these accusations. They even sent a message in Hebrew. They had the foreign minister make an official statement regarding the supposed Israelis in the area and issue threats. What exactly are they hoping to accomplish? This sort of language only could cause a political backlash, which is exactly what's happening. What did they hope would be achieved? And
It
especially
is.
after they have just tried to assassinate an Israeli. What was Iran hoping to gain from these comments?
Well, Iran is frustrated, really. Iran knows that the geopolitics of region has changed. The balance of power has changed after 2020 war. Turkey is in, Iran is out, and Iran doesn't want that. Israel is in, digged in even more. Iran doesn't like that. But the problem for Iran is that uh, the world is far different this year than last year for Iran, especially in the region, and that's not going backward anymore. So instead of realizing that things have changed and trying to find a new approach to the reality on the ground, Iran is trying to spoil uh, these events and is not able to. Uh, to go out of their way openly and then try to intimidate or threaten Jews or other nations in the region, uh, it's a sign that Iran is frustrated and doesn't know what they're doing. This is one. The second thing is Iran is trying to use anti-Zionism feelings or rhetoric to kind of court certain segment of Azerbaijani or Turkish society that are that Iran thinks that they are more pro-Islamic cause than let's say nationalist views. And so far Iran has failed on that too. I'm in Baku. I've been here for a month now, in and out, but usually at least for a month I've been in Baku, and I see the sentiment on the street. Even those that were the people that were sort of pro-Iran within Azerbaijani society, they are embarrassed with what Iran is doing. They cannot support Iran anymore. A lot of them are openly going against Iran now. So what Iran has done absolutely has backfired even within its own supporters. I was on a show today, on a television show today in Baku, and we were exactly discussing this issue that Iranian supporters are disintegrating so fast. I'll tell you that what happened recently, maybe it wasn't covered in the Western media. I don't know. I didn't see much. Iran
Mm-hmm.
has ambassador in Baku. In addition to the ambassador, Iran also had a religious figure in Baku from Iran that was representing Khamenei himself. And this guy was basically in charge of, now we know, recruiting fanatics and then creating, as they call it in Baku, fifth column in the country, you know. And that guy was going to be either arrested, although he was with diplomatic passport, maybe they wouldn't arrest him, but they would be at least willing to kick him out of country in Azerbaijan. And apparently he escaped on his own. He went back to Iran. He is not coming back to Azerbaijan. It doesn't look like it because every single day there are many articles, TV shows, radio shows, news articles, opinions about him and how bad he was. So imagine the supreme leader's representative literally has been kicked out of the society in Azerbaijan. This is really bad. This is worse than kicking an ambassador out of country. And Iran should come to its should accept the reality on the ground that Iran lost. They need to either change or they would keep losing. I don't know how long. They've lost everything they invested in Azerbaijan. They've invested hundreds of millions of dollars to recruit Azerbaijanis to have a base within the Azerbaijani society, and it is disintegrating very fast. As we speak, it is disintegrating.
That, by the way, is shocking information that not only hasn't been even covered in the Western media, but it's almost like it was deliberately suppressed from seeing the light of day, because I believe that had people known about Iran's targeting of Azerbaijan, the support during the war, the open support for Azerbaijan would have been much greater. But it
Yeah,
sounds to me
yeah.
like that was most deliberately covered up. I don't know by whom or how, but that information is completely new and hasn't been discussed at all.
It hasn't been. I mean, I'm following the English language news media, and they are not covering this event. This is a big event. Imagine Khamenei's representative being kicked out. Not that the Azerbaijani government kicked him out, but they were going to anyways. He
Hmm.
escaped. He escaped that embarrassment, and I don't think he's coming back. They would probably declare him as persona non grata uh, in
Hmm.
Azerbaijan. Uh, and this is really bad for Iranian government because we are talking about supreme leaders representative that has become an embarrassment for the country. The Azerbaijanis that supported him religiously are one by one going against him right now in media and newspapers and public opinion is really turning against Iran. Another thing that is really damaging Iran's reputation in Azerbaijan now is during the war, basically Iranian army invaded southern part of Azerbaijan in help of Armenia. And that was covered by, or at least reported by first, I think Israel Hayom did it. And I
Hmm.
personally know about this last year. I talked about this on television briefly, and knowing that it is not being covered in Azerbaijan, I thought that it is probably not, um, the government doesn't want us to cover this. So on my own, I discontinued covering it, but I knew about this. And now that is being revealed. Everything is everything is turning against Iran because of that incident also. The fact that Iranian army units entered Azerbaijani territory right across from Aras River, right where you were on that Khodafarin bridge. Just past that bridge was Iranian army units that prevented Azerbaijani units from chasing Armenians down in hope of liberating city of Zangilan faster. And Iran prevented Azerbaijan for at least for a day, and then Iran and Azerbaijan had to negotiate behind the scene, and until Iranian army units left the country. Azerbaijani government did not reveal this to public and the media in hope of asking Iran to change its policies or behavior, and Iran didn't. So now it is being revealed. So there is absolutely nothing that Azerbaijani society likes about Iran anymore. So on that matter, I think Iran, on one hand, is asking Azerbaijan to sever ties with Israel, but on the other hand, its actions actually help this relationship. So Azerbaijani-Israeli relationship is getting stronger because of what Iran is doing.
Well, that only cements the perception of Armenia's closeness to Iran, that Iran would actually go to the length of violating Azerbaijan's sovereignty, actually invading the country and bringing in the military to
To help
on behalf
Armenia,
of
yes.
Armenia. It is. It's and this is again part of the issue that kind of has been suppressed. I'm not even talking about on Azerbaijan's side in the attempt to bring about a diplomatic solution, but from Armenia's perspective, the fact that they were making all these completely incredible comments about genocides, terrorists, and so forth committed by allegedly committed by Azerbaijan during the war, while they were in fact colluding with another country and bringing in another country to literally invade Azerbaijan
Yeah,
during the war. This is actually a shocking discreditation of
yeah,
Armenian position during the war and their position on their relationship with Azerbaijan in general, because these facts speak for themselves. There was a foreign presence, but that foreign presence was not some Syrian jihadi, but a state actor, an army, an organized military by a neighbor.
Yeah.
This is quite a revelation. Now, ironically, there are some voices, some analysts saying that the specific reason for the attempted targeting of the Israeli um, is has to do with Iran seeking vengeance for the assassination of the head of its nuclear program. Um, they have made accusations that Israel have used a base in Azerbaijan to do that. I don't know whether there is any truth to that, but that's the reason the analysts are claiming Iran is doing this right now. They're pursuing these Israeli businessmen as an act of revenge for that specific targeted killing that has devastated their plans. Is there any truth to that from your understanding?
Well, well, Iran is accusing Azerbaijan of many things. One is, if you remember, Israel was able to take the nuclear documents from Iran, you know,
Hmm.
hundreds of kilograms of documents. It took apparently Israeli agents 8 hours from that warehouse. They spent 8 hours in the warehouse that was covered and sort of defended heavily by Iran's elite IRGC force. But Israel was able to do all of that within Iran. And Azerbaijan and Iran thinks that Israeli agents got some help from Azerbaijanis within Iran and the country of Azerbaijan in the north. There is really no evidence to show that Israeli agents used Azerbaijani uh, proper or Azerbaijanis within Iran to do this. In fact, there is no proof that Israeli agents did it themselves. Maybe Iranian agents that work with Israelis did this. We don't know. So these accusations are absolutely with no proof, zero proof. There's another accusation that Iran accuses Azerbaijan of helping Israeli drones or letting Israeli drones or military airplanes use Azerbaijani base to spy on Iran and perhaps Israeli drones. It was Israeli drones that they say that did bombard certain sites in Iran, and there's no evidence for that either. And if you remember, Rina, you were in the Iranian-Azerbaijani border. There's on the Iranian side, south of Arastrabur, that's where I am from. There's the second tallest mountain range within Iran. It's really high, elevated area. A drone flying from Azerbaijan to Iran to go all the way to Isfahan. This drone would have to go fly so high and so far to reach Natanz, where for instance, any drone at that time flying from Afghanistan would have to spend a third of energy to reach Isfahan, or from south similarly. So Iran knows that drones flying from Azerbaijan to go deep to to the central and south central part of Iran is a nonsense. But they accuse Azerbaijan of it anyways, because they think Azerbaijan is an easy pick. They can pick on Azerbaijan because of its size, because of Azerbaijan's need for Islamic help in international community and all of that. All of those has disappeared. And again, let me emphasize, Azerbaijan is not an easy pick anymore. It's not an easy prey anymore. And Azerbaijan is actually making Iran notice this and pushing Iran back now. And Iran has to uh, take a step or two back.
It's worth noting, of course, that Iran can't possibly be happy with Azerbaijan's purchase of Israeli drones, which were uh, a significant advantage during the war, and of course, it probably was ex- double frustrating to Iran. A, that Azerbaijanis won that war so decisively, and B, that they did that with the help with the hated Israeli weapons. So that must have been an extra, a cherry on top of everything else.
Yeah.
And they
Well,
developed it.
Iran thinks that Israeli made drones or Turkish made drones flying in Azerbaijani territory close to the border area is actually collecting military information from Iran or spying on Iran. This is another accusation that is laughable to me because I know the area, I know the terrain, uh, that in that part of Iran, northwest part of Iran, that's again where I'm from. Iran doesn't have many military bases in that part of the country, and no sensitive sites. Very insignificant military or border guard posts, and if any. So Iran just accuses Azerbaijan all of this, but clearly not happy about Israeli drones within Azerbaijan or Turkish drones within Azerbaijan. What happens is when Iran keeps saying Israeli drones, not naming any Turkish drones, is again because Iran thinks that Israel, being a Jewish country, would be an easy pick within Islamic world. That's why Iran keeps saying Zionism, Israel,
Mhm.
Israeli drones, Israeli whatever. It's just that Iran is playing this religious game, and I can tell you that uh, that also is backfiring. If you remember, Rina, I don't know if you remember, we had a show on our television uh, last year, right after the war, on our on our own television show. I asked Iranian Azerbaijanis to call in and express their opinion of Israel. How do they value Israel? How do they rate Israeli Azerbaijani relations, and so forth? We opened the lines for open call-ins. 49 people called in. Everyone was in favor of Israeli Azerbaijani relations. So many people from Tabriz, Tehran called asking, saying things like they would kiss Israeli flag and so forth. Do you know why people love Israel in Iran? I'll tell you why. Two major reasons. One is the fact that Israel is given uh, high tech military equipment to Azerbaijan, of course, selling and making money, no problem. We don't expect Israel to give us free weapons, of course not. But nevertheless, those weapons are very important, and Israel is not selling it to any country, to every country. Israel selects uh, countries to sell uh, high tech weapons, and Azerbaijan is one of them. So in addition to drones, Israel has sold Azerbaijan anti-missile defense system. Barak 8 shot down Iskander missiles fired by Armenia to city of Baku, to the capital, towards the end of Second War. So that's important. Azerbaijan is apparently in negotiation with Israel to buy Arrow 3 anti-missile system or missile defense system. So these are very important uh, technologically important weapons that Azerbaijan buys. So that's one reason. In addition to Israelis' support for Azerbaijan internationally, this is one reason. The second reason would surprise you, Reina. The second reason why Iranian Azerbaijanis love Israel or like Israel is because Iranian government itself. When Iranian government keeps saying Israel is bad, people think that Israel must be a good country. So that backfires. So whenever Iran likes a country, people tend to dislike that country, even if that country is a good country, could be a good country, but because the government likes it, then people automatically go against what the government likes. So this really frustrates Iran as well. So it is. I am laughing because it is Iran is in a laughable condition right now. Whatever they do backfires.
So President Aliyev actually responded sharply to these false accusations and very directly and completely unequivocally. And Iran kept trying to make this intonation blow it up, and of course, we are seeing that that actually managed to gain international attention, despite the fact that a lot of the Iranian Azerbaijani tensions have gone under the radar for various reasons. That actually did generate buzz that probably otherwise would not have happened simply because the whole situation is so ludicrous. Do you expect additional escalation? Do you think Iran will try more aggressive measures since this has not worked?
I think Iran has gone as far as it can. I think Iran is unable to do anything further. Iran is very good in spoiling any plans that countries around Iran has had in years, in the past years. You know, what Iran did in Iraq, in Afghanistan, in Syria, in Yemen, and so forth. These are, the games that Iran played to spoil whatever other countries planned. But Iran has come to a point, to a region, to a country that uh, doesn't have any plan against Iran. Azerbaijan doesn't have any plan against Iran that Iran can spoil. Azerbaijan wants to have peace with Armenia after this war. Azerbaijan wants to have stability in the region. It's time for Azerbaijan thinks it's time for reconstruction of the liberated area, to focus on economy, to focus on people's well-being and so forth, return of almost 1 million refugees or IDPs to their homes in liberated area. Azerbaijan has a lot of things on its uh, table to handle. And Iran wants Azerbaijan to kind of forego all of these. That's impossible to do. Azerbaijan has to go forward with its plan. It's not going to change. Russia wants to have peace, at least relative peace in the region. Turkey wants it. The whole world wants relative peace in the region. And Iran is the only odd man out in this discussion. And knowing that when Iranian foreign minister went to Moscow just last week to ask Russia to put pressure on Azerbaijan to kind of back down from its plans of maybe having even better relationship with Israel, or opening this corridor between Nakhchivan, Turkey, and Azerbaijan through Armenia. And Russia basically said this: the three countries of Azerbaijan, Russia, Armenia signed this agreement. We are going forward with it. We love other people to join in, but it's up to them to join in. Meaning, just basically go do your own stuff. We're not going to listen to you anymore. So that also backfired on on Iranian ambassador. In addition to Iran's request from Russia to prevent any country in cooperation with Azerbaijan having military exercise in Caspian Sea. And as you know, the Caspian littoral countries have signed an agreement that only Caspian littoral countries can have military exercise in the sea. But Iran is the only country that didn't ratify this agreement. And now Iran is coming back to complain. And Russia basically said, Lavrov said, Iran is the only country that didn't sign this, ratify this. So why are you complaining? So Amir Abdullahian was upset. The third thing that upset Amir Abdullahian was when he was in Moscow, he complained, Lavrov said that uh, provocative military exercises with close to borders have angered Azerbaijan. They're angry at this, meaning, and then Amir Abdullahian said, "Oh, we're angry too." But actually, Lavrov was saying to Iran, "Don't have these military exercises so close to the border, like almost 50 meters from the border, so close. Remember, you were by the Aras River, the hills
Yes, of course.
overlooking towards the. They had a military
Mhm.
exercise there. Can you imagine? So close. And this is unheard of. This is unseen of before, and within any country, and and Iran, basic Iranian foreign ministry came back empty-handed from Moscow just last week, and now they're trying to. They don't know what they're doing. To be honest with you, they're just trying to perhaps scare off, you know, Azerbaijanis in Iran. That's danger to them. Us in Iran, Iran is scared of, and they're trying to scare us to not to uh, perhaps support Azerbaijan, and that's not going to happen. Iran is trying to use these military exercises or semi crises that is created or fabricated to take focus away from internal dissent. Iran's economy is in ruin, unemployment is over 50%, inflation is unbelievably high. There is no hope for, in the near future for anything good within Iranian society from the government side. The JCPOA agreement is in limbo. Nothing is working for Iran, and Iran needs to keep focus away from all these problems. That's another reason that Iran is trying to create or fabricate problems.
Mhm. So all of this appears to be nothing more than scare tactics, and we don't have to worry about another invasion in the near future, at least.
No, no, Iran doesn't have that power. Uh, After the November ceasefire agreement with Russian mediation between Azerbaijan and Armenia, uh, that uh, that also ended the war for now. Uh, Turkey and Azerbaijan had an agreement, a military alliance agreement, that literally uh, put Turkey as a guarantor for Azerbaijan's Azerbaijan's territorial integrity. If anyone attacks Azerbaijan, Turkey will come in automatically, and that is a very serious, very important agreement, and Iran knows well that cannot play with Azerbaijan. In addition to that agreement, that Turkey is basically a guarantor to Azerbaijan's borders, Iran cannot fight with Azerbaijan because if it comes to that, South Azerbaijanis, over 30 million South Azerbaijanis mostly will take Azerbaijan's side, not Iranian side. So Iran would be fighting with its own citizens. And that's not advised. That's not a wise thing to do.
No, it doesn't sound like a winning strategy for a country that's already wrought with economic and other social problems.
Yeah, yeah.
Well, this has been a very enlightening and eye opening discussion, and thank you so much for the absolutely fascinating information you revealed for us. We will, of course, continue to follow these events. Azerbaijan is becoming a major mover and shaker in the region and internationally. It's negotiating significant cooperation agreements with the European Union. So we can expect it to become a significant player on the international stage in the very near future. We'll see how things shake out. Um, this has been the Washington Outsider Report. See you all next week, same time, same place.
Thank you.